That overload can really be heightened by the number 3. When they play the ball in, they can come and join in. So as a progression, of course, they can be a bounce player on the outside initially, but they can come and join in. I'm Vinny Halsall, part of our FA Grassroots Coach Development team and also Physical Education Officer for the Southwest of England. We're looking at a 6-week session programme focusing on marking and intercepting. This is week 2. For practice session 2, where we're focusing on marking and intercepting, we're now going to bring in more emphasis on the second defender. Our arrival activity is actually going to be the same as we had for our practice session 1. Now this is really important because when we talk about linking the learning, we need to give our young players, first of all, some ownership so they can actually set up cat and mouse straight away. The size of the area can be up to them. They've played it once already, and if you remember from week 1, cat and mouse was very, very simply 2 players, 1 cat, 1 mouse, and it was all about movement and scanning and the cat basically trying to shoulder tag the mouse. So the youngsters can set that up very quickly. We did have a third player, which again I'll mention now, and that third player could be the referee and also an opportunity to swap in and out. But the most important thing for week 2, so that there's more challenge, is that we this time introduce a ball. Now if we're going to maintain good scanning, and particularly by the defender, it's important how we use this ball initially, especially for our younger players. So I'm going to say that actually the attacking player, the player in possession of the ball, is going to move around with ball in hand. Now trust me on this, that will slow that player down. So moving with ball in hand will give the defending player more opportunity to do a little bit of catching up. Okay, so the ball in hand is a nice way of making it a new challenge. And of course, we can progress it further in terms of the task and the use of the equipment by actually having ball at feet. So we've now got the attacking player moving around the area as the mouse, trying not to be tagged. And of course, ball at feet really will give the defending player an opportunity to move quickly and to tag the defender. There's no need within cat and mouse to actually go into winning the ball. That's going to become more explicit in terms of our marking skills when we move into our game. Finally, as we did before, the repetition shouldn't be any more than 15 seconds, so a nice time constraint on there because it should be high intensity. And again, if we've got a dominant player or players within this group, then depending on your numbers, you might have 4 cat and mouse activities going on at once. Then the stronger, more dominant players can actually go and move and play with the stronger, more dominant players. So cat and mouse, a bit of a progression, ball in hand, and also ball at feet. Our practice session design for session 2 is called whole part whole. So once we've done the arrival activity, we're now going straight into a whole game. And of course, we know our players will love that. So the whole game, I'm going to show you on this pitch here, is very similar. In fact, the key difference is our numbers. The whole game is going to be a 5v5 rivals game. And if you remember from week 1, we actually had a 3v3 rival games. So depending on your numbers, of course, you might decide to have a 4v4 and over here another 4v4. So as always, think about your context, think about your players, think about your environment. So our 5v5 rivals game is again a locked in game. So let's say we've got the blue team in possession of the ball, and the aim of the blue team is can they try and maneuver the ball around the area, keeping possession and scoring a point when all blue players have had possession of the ball. Okay, so it doesn't need to go in sequence because that's not the real game. But essentially, if this blue player is playing into here, we can see this becomes a 1v1 duel again. And the focus is still on the marking skills of our number 5 as the ball travels. Can they close down? So can their movement be nice and swift? Can they actually show good awareness with scanning, again like a meerkat, to have a little look at the weight of the pass, the direction of the pass. So the number 10 might actually take the ball on the back foot here, and that will then dictate the positioning of our number 5. Timing also comes into play here as one of our key capabilities in terms of the timing of that movement to close the space down. And then similarly here, let's say that number 10 plays a little ball around the corner into blue, and it may well be that our defender here is completely out of position. So really important now that this player covers that space so that they are marking effectively. Notice again, this is multi-directional, so there's no goal side per se. So that's where this player simply needs to scan and show a good awareness of where do they think the number 6 is going to go. So this will be a busy game. Again, I've shown you it as a 5v5, but you can do it as a 4v4 or even perhaps a 3v3, depending on the number of players that you have within your group. So as with any whole part whole session design, it's really important that our young players get the opportunity to play and explore. And remember as well, try and fit the challenge to the level of ability of your players. So with our scoring system, we've talked about the yellow players trying to maneuver the ball between all 5 players to score a point. Of course, it might be that it's actually they simply need to combine with 3 different players to score a point. The key thing is the yellow players, the team in possession, which isn't our focus, they are moving the ball around the area where we've got our 1v1 locked in situation. So now the number 10 is looking at who he can play to, but the important piece with our coaching is the number 3 closing down? Are they perhaps trying to get into a position early with good timing where they might steal the ball, starting to introduce the concept of intercepting? Or it may well be that as the yellow player is pushed into the corner, obviously they move, they position themselves really tightly, and they have a little bit of awareness of where the yellow player might want to pass. So be flexible with your scoring system. The reason I've shown these numbers within this design is so you can transition into something like this par practice. But again, be flexible with it. So the par practice is now going to involve, first of all, using these end channels. And I'm going to talk about the space again, the step principle, in a moment. And essentially what's going on here is we're going to play 3 yellows against 2 blues, for my example. If I mention the space now, it's likely that you will have cones, more likely spots here to actually zone off these areas. If once you get playing, if you perceive that the space isn't quite right, ask the players, then obviously you can move your spots or your cones a little bit wider to give more space to play into. So again, be flexible with your delivery based on your observation skills. So the par practice looks like this. Yellow player here, maneuvering with the ball, when they want to, play into the other yellow player. We've clearly got some 1v1 marking going on here again. And again, we want that positive, enthusiastic, and we're bringing in a real element of intelligence now. Depending on what happens here, how is the number 3 going to position themselves? Okay, are they going to position themselves whereby they're side on and really tight to force that player backwards? And of course, now we're bringing in our second defender. And our second defender, in really simple terms, their job is to cover and communicate. And that cover and communication might be to show them off to the right, whereby we can now actually defend, in effect, as friends. I really like that phrase, defend as friends, whereby first defender doing the tight marking, second defender providing the covering. Let's say that this player is really clever, gets a touch around the corner, and our number 4 didn't quite get in the right position, and they now send the ball to the other end. Things very, very quickly now switch around, where this yellow player is looking to play back into here. And of course, these guys have got to get everything we've talked about so far. Yeah, really good intelligent defending, but first of all, their movement, their scanning, and their positioning. And of course, as with any par practice, this is in effect a skills practice. There's real opposition in here. We've actually got in effect an overload in terms of 3 attackers against 2 defenders. That overload can really be heightened by the number 3. When they play the ball in, they can come and join in. So as a progression, of course, they can be a bounce player on the outside initially, but they can come and join in. Now that really does test out, first and foremost, our positive and intelligent defending. So number 3's joined in. The ball is now dropped back to number 3. Now you may be able to see that picture. Yeah, for me, that number 3 is now thinking, rather than playing through or around, can I play over? Therefore, really important that our number 4 shows good movement, good scanning, good awareness, and gets themselves in a position where they can stop that forward pass. Okay, so that is good marking. If that happens, our number 3 now comes into here and does in effect a job and a half. They're doing a bit of marking of the player, but also a bit of marking of the space. So in summary, again, progress as you see your players need more of a challenge, but we can turn what is in effect an overload of 3 versus 2 and actually make it more realistic and more challenging with our defenders by bringing that player onto the field of play, whereby it becomes a 2v2 on the inside. As always, your decision with your players within your context. As we move back from our part activity into the whole game, because as I've said, for practice session number 2, our session design is whole part whole. Obviously, we're going to bring our players back onto the pitch. These locked in areas are going to disappear. I'm going to keep the end zones for now. I'll explain what they're for in a moment. Everybody back on the pitch. We'll just play with 1 ball because that's normally what we do. All right, so we've got our 5v5 back on the pitch. You'll also notice down here, I've got some marker cones, and as much as possible, can you align the colour of the cones to the colour of the bibs? Yeah, really important piece there. So the yellow players, when they score, they'll be running to the yellow cones. The blue players, when they score, they'll be running to the blue cones. However, we're still playing 5v5 rivals, but we've simply moved our locked-in zones. And our 5v5 rivals involves, I'll do a very, very quick example. Let's say our number 10 doesn't switch on too well, yeah, loses concentration, which is a really important coaching point for defending, and the ball gets slid down the line, number 3 gets turned, and then number 3 travels. And for now, and I'm going to show you lots of ways in which you can vary this second version of the game, the number 3 simply has to play the ball over the line in control, so we're playing end line to score. The number 3 has scored, so that 1v1 duel, yeah, the number 3 has come out on top. The number 3 now has to run off the pitch to the blue cones, and there's lots of ways of doing this. I'm going to turn the cone upside down. Okay, so the number 3 is run off the pitch to show that they are winning 1-0. Whilst that's happening, this is obviously giving the yellow team an opportunity to play in the other direction, and then now playing with an overload. Let me explain why I've left those lines in. For realism, we could have that as an offside zone. So these guys, they can sit in there if they want to, but this player now, to help our team in terms of the whole compactness, can push up to this line, and therefore at the minute, that is offside. So I'm focusing now on the blue team in terms of their defending. If the ball comes into here and this player isn't doing a good job, then away we go, and the yellows have now scored a point. Okay, what happens? The yellow player has to run off the pitch, and you got it, turn the cone upside down to show that a score has happened, creating an overload, making the defensive work now for the yellow team tougher because they're playing 4v5. Finally, as always with your context, think about your number of players. This can be just as effective in 2 games of 3v3 for your younger players, 2 games of 4v4 for those 9, 10, 11-year-olds perhaps. Think about your numbers in your context and your environment. As we move into match day challenges, notice that this format of game, or this size of game, 5v5, again, you might be doing 4v4, 3v3. I talked earlier about defenders' friends. Now, I would encourage you, when you're talking not just about the role of the first defender, ball being played into here, that 1v1 marking, but the role of the second defender, consider giving those match day challenges to your young players. Again, linking the learning from your practice session into match day. So the role of the first defender, to move swiftly, to get themselves into a good position. The timing of that movement is really important so we can stop the number 10 from turning. And on blue number 10, coming in here as a position of cover. I've actually used on a match day the concept of the 3 C's. The 3 C's being close down, press in effect, cover and communication. So close down, cover, communication. You could actually put those 3 C's on a whiteboard and ask your players before the game to go and put their name alongside them, yeah, to identify which of those things they want to work on today. As always, from practice session to match day, link the learning.